Joey, welcome to the Scholarship GPS podcast. So pleased to have you with us. If you would, just give us a quick introduction of who you are.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Joey. I've been in the test prep and admissions industry since 2005. I've worked for four different types of universities in their admissions offices, liberal arts colleges, tier one research institutions, as well as the UC system.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's that third one I really wanted to tap into your expertise on because I've had several college admissions advisors and experts on the show, but never anybody who has a real deep specialty in the UC system. And I know that there are some differences, some quirks maybe that for students looking to go to UC schools that they need to be aware of. So glad you're here with us.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this topic.
Well, good. Well, how, just one question for you is how long have you've been reading applications?
I started in 2021, which is interesting because that's right after COVID happened and right
Uh-huh.
as the entire university system switched to their quote unquote test free process.
Okay. All right. Do you want to elaborate on that? The quote unquote test free? Why do you put it that way?
I say that because when it comes to standardized testing, it's not just SAT or ACT, right? We're not arguing about the merits of whether or not the test is valid. Even though I'm in the test prep industry, I agree that the test does have its flaws. It's that when UCs are evaluating the academic rigor of a student, they can still use either AP or IB scores. Sometimes students, like from international areas, will submit TOEFL scores as well.
Hmm. Okay. So what you're saying then is that they are still using these tests as part of their admissions decisions?
They actually do say it on their website. It says as one of their 13-point holistic criteria for admissions that they do consider AP subject scores. And so I think the naming of test free is not necessarily the right name they should have used.
Yeah, yep, okay. All right, that makes sense. Well, this may be one of them, but do you have some surprises that you have had as you've gone through this process of really diving deep into the UC system?
I think this is the biggest thing that was a shock to me when I switched over. Because previously I'd worked in highly selective, like private admissions, liberal arts college, where this idea of holistic admissions was let's look at their whole story, let's look at their letter of recommendation, let's try to get a full picture of the student. Now, the UCs do also use their form of holistic admissions. But what was shocking to me was how much emphasis was placed on the grades, the types of classes that they were taking. And so I need to qualify this by saying that every UC has its own process.
Okay.
But with the ones that I was reading applications for, I was shocked by how much the ranking and the rigor of the student mattered in the process.
Okay. All right. So class rank, and then are they looking at the student's high school compared to other high schools? Is that part of the process?
That is not part of the process. Students are evaluated within the rigor of their own pool. So
Okay.
even if you go to a neighboring high school, you'll see families being like, oh my gosh, but so and so at down the street high school has a lower GPA, but they got in versus my kid didn't. Well, I'm like, well, that absolutely makes sense because they aren't being compared with each other.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Great. So um, obviously things like GPA and class rank then are important.
It makes sense if you really think about it, right? These are really large institutions
Hmm.
trying to funnel a large number of people in. And when you remove testing as a metric, what other metric do you use, right? You have nothing else to use besides grades and rigor.
Yeah. Yep. But if they are taking a holistic approach, what are some of the other things that they are considering?
So they consider the context of the high school. They consider the background of the applicant. The UCs have a big push to recruit first generation students as well as students from underrepresented communities. You can call them rural students, students from small
Okay.
communities.
Mhm.
They also look at students who have demonstrated expertise in a particular area. Some UCs look for major readiness. And so for you to demonstrate major readiness, then maybe let's say you want to be an engineer, then you've been on the robotics team,
Hmm.
or you're applying for a nursing program. So you've done a lot of clinical hours or shadowing and that sort of thing.
So, continuing that thought, there used to be this concept of a well-rounded student. I still hear a lot of parents talking about that, but what I'm hearing from you is that at least for the UC system, it might be that a student who is angular is the phrase I've heard, where maybe they are well-rounded in some respects, but you talked about a future engineering student wanting to or having been in robotics. Is it important for students to have clarity on their future college major and demonstrated that interest in that major while in high school?
This is a very hard question for me to answer because there are so many permutations of students and so many UCs. Like I
Yeah,
mentioned
okay.
earlier, right? They all have different admissions practices.
Mhm.
And let's just take nursing, for example, right? Nursing is the most competitive major at the
Mhm.
UCs with a 1% acceptance rate, right? So those types of kids need to be super duper angular. There's no
Okay.
ifs, ands, or buts. You have to be
Yeah.
screaming nurse.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you have a school like UCLA where if you're just applying to their general school of letters and sciences or arts and sciences, I can't remember the name right now, it doesn't matter. As long as you have good activities, good leadership, good grades,
Okay.
then you don't need to be angular.
Okay. Okay. Great. Interesting. Um, well, what are maybe some misconceptions that parents and students have that you have seen over the last few years when it comes to the UC application process?
The biggest one is that the PIQs can save them, right? So, for those of you who don't know, the PIQs are the personal insight questions. They're the short essays that you write when you're applying to these schools. And a lot of families were like, well, so and so has a 3.5 GPA. So academically, they're not at the level of the published GPA. So we're going to write some really stellar essays and then Johnny's going to get in. Right. And like I said earlier, one of the biggest shocks is how much GPA matters in the process.
Mhm.
And so no amount of coaching your essays or even getting a ghostwriter, even if you got like some Pulitzer Prize winning person to write your essays for you, it's probably not going to save you if you have a GPA that's too low.
Yeah. Now, by the same token, let's say a student, did have the quote stats, but then their PIQ responses were less than stellar. Could that tank their chances?
I've seen that at for a highly selective school. Yeah, then that could matter, right? So I think when people are talking about essays mattering, just broadly, this is just beyond the UCs too. That's if you're an edge case student, right? You're admissible, but then what else do you have, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to save you at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. And that is kind of one of the differences between the UCs and most of the other colleges are those PIQs, correct?
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is when you hear them on their webinars, and they also tell us this in reader training, is that they're not supposed to be creative writing exercises. We don't call them an essay for a reason, right? You can just give us a very straightforward response to the question. You don't need to be all flowery with it.
Okay. All right. Oh, I like that. That's more my natural style of writing.
I
So
agree too, right? You
yeah.
don't have to be talking about, oh, I'm a chocolate bar and, I'm bitter on some days and sweet on others. Like nobody cares.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, well, maybe I should have applied to some more UCs.
Maybe.
Well, what are some things that you wish families knew about the UC process?
The biggest thing is not just the admissions part, right? The admissions part is important if you want to get in, but I wish families had a better understanding of what the UCs stand for.
Mhm.
So the UCs, if you just look at US News and World Report, are all ranked really high. And they're ranked high for certain reasons, for the amount of research that they have, for the amount of people with PhDs, for the funding, for the social mobility of certain students, right? But that just because they have really high rankings doesn't mean that they're going to be the perfect fit for your student. For example, here's a fun stat that I like to share with families. Certain UCs have medical school acceptance rates that fall below the national average.
Hmm. Okay.
And this could be for many reasons, but one of my suspicions is it's a byproduct of how large and impersonal the academic journey can be there.
Hmm. Can you expand on that a little bit?
When you go to a large campus like a UC, some of your first and second year classes are going to be in lecture halls with 400, 500 people. One of my students, who is a computer science major at UC Berkeley, his intro to computer science class, they had to enter a lottery to see who could even go to class. The students who lost the
Wow.
lottery had to zoom in.
Okay.
So for some students, it can be a very large impersonal process, and it can be a struggle to get to know your professors. So they think that, oh my God, once I get in, I'm going to become a doctor, I'm going to become a lawyer. But no, once you get there, then you have to start really fighting to get your piece of the pie, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That's really good advice. If you don't know this off the top of your head, that's fine. But do you have a range perhaps of the size of the UC schools, maybe the smallest to the largest in terms of student population?
Student population, I think the smallest would be UC Merced, which I think is 2,000 per class. So that'd be like 8 to 10,000.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then the biggest one would be like 35,000. I think that's approximately the range. But again, I'm spitballing right now. I don't
Yeah.
have the numbers in front of me.
Okay. All right. So they probably do more skew to the higher end from what I'm hearing. But even on the smaller end, like a Merced, it's it's not huge, but it's not a tiny liberal arts college either.
Yeah, and this also is going to be major dependent too, right? An English major at Berkeley, you're not running through a bunch of English majors when you go into a school like this. So then those types of majors, then you'll get a lot more one-on-one or mentorship or smaller class sizes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Tell us something else that you would want the parents to know, and then why don't you kind of wrap us up by telling us how you work with students and families, maybe broadly speaking, but also specifically for the UC application process.
I think another thing I want families to know is that if you're planning on going to a UC, I think the families who are best prepared for it are families who have started planning early. While you can be undecided and you can switch your majors when you go to these schools, having an understanding of what a potential plan might be could allow this journey to be more streamlined, right? Understanding which majors are not appropriate for you, understanding if you're even well suited for a business major or engineering major, or if you're ready for quote unquote becoming a pre med.
Hmm.
I think the planning process shouldn't be once you get in, right? I think for many families, even just having that conversation as early as ninth grade is like, you want to go to UC? Well, what does that mean for you? You should probably be looking at X, Y, and Z.
Reverse engineering, reverse
Yeah, a
engineering the
little bit,
process.
just so
Yeah.
you understand, because it's to me the UCs are the antithesis of a liberal arts college where you can kind of dabble in a little bit of everything and still end up with a degree. You got to go to a UC with a plan.
Yeah. Yep. I like hearing that. Tell us how you work with families.
So I work with families starting as soon as the high school process begins, going into ninth grade, on just planning to even determine if the UCs are a good fit. Full disclaimer, even though I'm really knowledgeable about the UCs, I really try to get families to consider other options outside of them. My big focus is challenging students' conceptions so that they have a better understanding of what best fit means to them. Throughout the process, we work on critical thinking skills, we do career exploration, we look at a variety of colleges just to see, what's out there.
I love it. Where can people connect with you?
There's a bunch of ways people can connect to me. I think the easiest way is finding me on social media. The name of my handle is Think Prep. So it's spelled a little bit differently. It's combining the word think and unique together. So it's T as in Tom, H as in Henry, I as in India, N as in Nancy, Q as in Queen, U as in Umbrella, E as in Edward. Think Prep. So you can find me at Think Prep on Instagram and think.prep on TikTok.
Fantastic. Well, we will put links to your social handles in the show notes today. Joey, this has been really informative. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to my audience and look forward to having you back again in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.